Hello and welcome to Bookspot. I'm Earl Weinberg. This time we will continue our reading of Have Spacesuit Will Travel by Robert Heinlein. We've left our protagonist and narrator Kip with his friend Pee-wee alone in an enemy base on Pluto. The base was huge. Half that mountain must have been honeycombed. We did it at a fast trot, ignoring things as complicated as museum exhibits and twice as interesting, simply making sure that no worm face was anywhere. Pee-wee ran with the weapon at the ready, taking 20 to the dozen and urging me on. Besides an almost empty base, no ships in, and the worm faces feeding, the Mother Thing's plan required that all this happen shortly before a particular hour of the Plutonian night. Why? I panted. So she could signal her people, of course. But I shut up. I had wondered about the Mother Thing's people, but didn't even know as much about her as I did about Wormface, except that she was everything that made her the Mother Thing. Now she was dead. Pee-wee said she was outside without a spacesuit, so she was surely dead. That little soft, warm thing wouldn't last 2 seconds in that ultra-Arctic weather, not to mention suffocation and lung hemorrhage. I choked up. Of course, Pee-wee might be wrong. I had to admit that she rarely was, but this might be one of the times, in which case we would find her. But if we didn't find her, she was outside. And Pee-wee, do you know where my spacesuit is? Huh? Of course, right next to where I got this. She patted the nylon rope, which she had coiled around her waist and tied with a bow. Then the second we are sure we've cleaned out the worm faces, I'm going outside to look for her. Yes, yes, but we've got to find my suit too. I'm going with you. No doubt she would. Maybe I could persuade her to wait in the tunnel out of that bone-freezing wind. Pee-wee, why did she have to send her message at night to a ship in a rotation period orbit? Or is there... My words were chopped off by a rumble. The floor shook in that loose bearing vibration that frightens people and animals alike. We stopped dead. What was that? Pee-wee whispered. I swallowed. Unless it's part of this rumpus the Mother Thing planned, it isn't, I think. It's a quake. An earthquake? A Pluto quake. Pee-wee, we've got to get out of here. I wasn't thinking about where. You don't in a quake. Pee-wee gulped. We can't bother with earthquakes. We haven't time. Hurry, Kip, hurry. She started to run, and I followed, gritting my teeth. If Pee-wee could ignore a quake, so could I, though it's like ignoring a rattlesnake in bed. Pee-wee, Mother Thing's people, is their ship in orbit around Pluto? What? Oh, no, no, they're not in a ship. Then why at night? Something about the heaviside layer here? How far away is their base? I was wondering how far a man could walk here. We had done almost 40 miles on the moon. Could we do 40 blocks here, or even 40 yards? You could insulate your feet probably, but that wind... Pee-wee, they don't live here, do they? What? Don't be silly. They have a nice planet of their own. Kip, if you keep asking foolish questions, we'll be too late. Shut up and listen. I shut up. What follows I got in snatches as we ran, and some of it later. When the Mother Thing had been captured, she had lost ship, space clothing, communicator, everything. Wormface had destroyed it all. There had been treachery, capture through violation of truce while parleying. He grabbed her when they were supposed to be under a king's X, was Pee-wee's indignant description. And that's not fair. He'd promised. Treachery would be as natural in Wormface as venom in a Gia monster. I was surprised that Mother Thing had risked a palaver with him. It left her a prisoner of ruthless monsters, equipped with ships that made our own look like horseless carriages, weapons which started with a death ray and ended heaven knows where, plus bases, organization, and supplies. She had only her brain and her tiny soft hands. Before she could use the rare combination of circumstances necessary to have any chance at all, she had to replace her communicator. I think of it as her radio, but it was more than that. And she had to have weapons. The only thing she could do to get them was to build them. She had nothing, not a bobby pin, only that triangular ornament with spirals engraved on it. To build anything, she had to gain access to a series of rooms which I would describe as electronics labs. Not that they looked like the bench where I jiggered with electronics, but electron pushing has its built in logic. If electrons are to do what you want them to, components have to look pretty much a certain way, whether built by humans, worm faces, or the mother thing. A waveguide gets its shape from the laws of nature, and inductance has its necessary geometry, no matter who the technician is. So it looked like an electronics lab, a very good one. It had gear I did not recognize, but which I felt I could understand if I had time. I got only a glimpse. The mother thing spent many, many hours there. She would not have been permitted there, even though she was a prisoner at large with freedom in most ways and anything she wanted, including private quarters with Pee Wee. I think that Wormface was afraid of her, even though she was a prisoner. He did not want to offend her unnecessarily. She got the run of their shops by baiting their cupidity. Her people had many things that Wormfaces had not: gadgets, inventions, conveniences. She began by inquiring why they did a thing this way rather than another way, which was so much more efficient. A tradition or religious reasons? When asked what she meant, she looked helpless and protested that she couldn't explain, which was a shame because it was simple and so easy to build, too. Under close chaperonage, she built something. The gadget worked. Then something else. Presently, she was in the labs daily, making things for her captors, things that delighted them. She always delivered, the privilege depended on it. But each gadget involved parts she needed herself. She sneaked bits and pieces into her pouch, Pee Wee told me. They never knew exactly what she was doing. She would use five of a thing, and the sixth would go into her pouch. Her pouch? Of course, that's where she hid the brain the time she and I swiped the ship, didn't you know? I didn't know she had a pouch. Well, neither did they. They watched to see she didn't carry anything out of the shop, and she never did, not where it showed. Uh, Pee Wee, is the mother thing a marsupial? Huh? Like possums? You don't have to be a marsupial to have a pouch. Look at squirrels. They have pouches in their cheeks. Yes. She sneaked a bit now and then, and I swiped things too. During rest time, she worked on them in our room. The mother thing had not slept all the time we had been on Pluto. She worked long hours publicly, making things for worm faces: a stereo telephone no bigger than a pack of cigarettes, a tiny beetle like arrangement that crawled all over anything it was placed on and integrated the volume, many other things. But during hours set apart for rest, she worked for herself, usually in darkness, those tiny fingers busy as a blind watchmaker's. She made two bombs and a long distance communicator and beacon. I didn't get all this tossed over Pee Wee's shoulder while we raced through the base. She simply told me that the mother thing had managed to build a radio beacon and had been responsible for the explosion, and that we must hurry, hurry, hurry. Pee Wee, I said, panting, what's the rush? If the mother thing is outside, I want to bring her in, her body, I mean, but you act as if we had a deadline. We do. The communicator beacon had to be placed outside at a particular local time. The Plutonian day is about a week, the astronomers were right again, so that the planet itself would not blanket the beacon. But the mother thing had no spacesuit. They had discussed having Pee Wee suit up, go outside, and set the beacon. It had been so designed that Pee Wee need only trigger it. But that depended on locating Pee Wee's spacesuit, then breaking in and getting it after the worm faces were disposed of. They had never located it. The mother thing had said serenely, singing confident notes that I could almost hear ringing in my head, "Never mind, dear, I can go out and set it myself." Mother thing, you can't, Pee Wee had protested. It's cold out there. I shan't be long. You won't be able to breathe. It won't be necessary for so short a time. That settled it. In her own way, the mother thing was as hard to argue with as Wormface. The bombs were built, the beacon was built, a time approached when all factors would match, no ship expected, few worm faces, Pluto faced to the right way, feeding time for the staff, and they still did not know where Pee Wee's suit was, if it had not been destroyed. Mother Thing resolved to go ahead. But she told me just a few hours ago, when she let me know that today was the day, that if she did not come back in 10 minutes or so, then she hoped I could find my suit and trigger the beacon if she hadn't been able to. Pee-wee started to cry. That was the first time she admitted she wasn't sure she could do it. Pee-wee, stop it. Then what? I waited for the explosions. They came right together, and I started to search places I hadn't been allowed to go. But I couldn't find my suit. Then I found you, and oh, Kip, she's been out there almost an hour. She looked at her watch. There's only about 20 minutes left. If the beacon isn't triggered by then, she'll have had all her trouble and died for nothing. She wouldn't like that. Where's my suit? We found no more worm faces. Apparently, there was only one on duty while the others fed. Pee-wee showed me a door, airlock type, behind which was the feeding chamber. The bomb may have cracked that section, for gas-tight doors had closed themselves when the owners were blown to bits. We hurried past. Logical as usual, Pee-wee ended our search at my spacesuit. It was one of more than a dozen human-type suits. I wondered how much soup these ghouls ate. Well, they wouldn't eat again. I wasted no time. I simply shouted, "Hi, Oscar," and started to suit up. "Where you been, chum?" Oscar seemed in perfect shape. Fat's suit was next to mine and Tim's next to it. I glanced at them as I stretched Oscar out, wondering where they had equipment I could use. Pee-wee was looking at Tim's suit. "Maybe I can wear this." It was much smaller than Oscar, which made it only 9 sizes too big for Pee-wee. "Don't be silly. It'd fit you like socks on a rooster. Help me. Take off that rope, coil it, and clip it to my belt." "You won't need it. The mother thing planned to take the beacon out the walkway about 100 yards and sit it down. If she didn't manage it, that's all you do. Then twist the stud on top. Don't argue. How much time?" "Yes, Kip, 18 minutes. Those winds are strong," I added. "I may need the line." The mother thing didn't weigh much. If she had been swept off, I might need a rope to recover her body. "Hand me that hammer off Fat's suit." "Right away." I stood up. It was good to have Oscar around me. Then I remembered how cold my feet got walking in from the ship. Wish I had asbestos boots. Pee-wee looked startled. "Wait right here." She was gone before I could stop her. I went on sealing up while I worried. She hadn't even stopped to pick up the projector weapon. Shortly, I said, "Tight, Oscar?" "Tight, boy." Chin valve okay, blood color okay, radio, I wouldn't need it. Water, the tank was dry. No matter, I wouldn't have time to grow thirsty. I worked the chin valve, making the pressure low because I knew that pressure outdoors was quite low. Pee-wee returned with what looked like ballet slippers for a baby elephant. She leaned close to my faceplate and shouted, "They wear these! Can you get them on?" It seemed unlikely, but I forced them over my feet like badly fitting socks. I stood up and found that they improved traction. They were clumsy, but not hard to walk in. A minute later, we were standing at the exit of the big room I'd first seen. Its airlock doors were closed now as a result of Mother Thing's other bomb, which she had placed to blow out the gate valve panels in the tunnel beyond. The bomb in the feeding chamber had been planted by Pee-wee, who had then ducked back to their room. I don't know whether the Mother Thing timed the two bombs to go off together or triggered them by remote control, nor did it matter. They had made a shambles of Wormface's fancy base. Pee-wee knew how to waste air through the airlock. When the inner door opened, I shouted, "Time?" 14 minutes. She held up her watch. "Remember what I said. Just stay here. If anything moves, blue light it first and ask questions afterward." "I remember." I stepped in and closed the inner door, found the valve in the outer door, waited for pressure to equalize. The 2 or 3 minutes it took that big lock to bleed, I spent in glum thought. I didn't like leaving Pee-wee alone. I thought all worm faces were dead, but I wasn't sure. We had searched hastily. One could have zigged while we zagged. They were so fast. Besides that, Pee-wee had said, "I remember," when she should have said, "Okay, Kip, I will." A slip of the tongue. That flea-hopping mind made slips only when it wanted to. There's a world of difference between Roger and Wilco. Besides, I was doing this for foolish motives. Mostly, I was going out to recover the mother thing's body, folly, because after I brought her in, she would spoil. It would be kinder to leave her in natural deep freeze. But I couldn't bear that. It was cold out there, and I couldn't leave her out in the cold. She'd been so little and warm, so alive. I had to bring her in where she could get warm. You're in bad shape when your emotions force you into acts which you know are foolish. Worse still, I was doing this in a reckless rush because the mother thing had wanted that beacon set before a certain second, now only 12 minutes away, maybe 10. Well, I'd do it, but what sense was it? Say her home star is close by. Oh, say it's Proxima Centauri and the worm faces came from somewhere farther. Even if her beacon works, it still takes over 4 years for her SOS to reach her friends. This might have been okay for the mother thing. I had an impression that she lived a very long time. Waiting a few years for rescue might not bother her. But Pee Wee and I were not creatures of her sort. We'd be dead before that speed of light message crawled to Proxima Centauri. I was glad that I had seen Pee Wee again, but I knew what was in store for us: death in days, weeks, or months at most, from running out of air or water or food, or a worm faced ship might be landing before we died, which meant one unholy Sabbath of a fight in which, if we were lucky, we would die quickly. No matter how you figured, planting that beacon was merely carrying out the deceased's last wishes, words you hear at funerals. Sentimental folly. The outer door started to open. It was cold out there, biting cold, even though it was not yet in the wind. The glow panel was still working, and I could see that the tunnel was a mess. The 2 dozen fractional pressure stops had ruptured like eardrums. I wondered what sort of bomb could be haywired from stolen parts, kept small enough to conceal two in a body pouch, along with some sort of radio rig, and nevertheless have force enough to blow out those panels. The blast had rattled my teeth several hundred feet away in solid rock. The first dozen panels were blown inward. Had she set it off in the middle of the tunnel? A blast that big would fling her away like a feather. She must have planted it there, then come inside and triggered it, then gone back through the lock just as I had. That was the only way I could see it. It got colder every step. My feet weren't too cold yet. Those clumsy mucklucks were okay. The worm faces understood insulation. Oscar, you got the fires burning? Roaring, chum, it's a cold night, you're telling me. Just beyond the outermost burst panel, I found her. She had sunk forward as if too tired to go on. Her arms stretched out in front of her, and on the floor of the tunnel, not quite touched by her tiny fingers, was a small round box about the size ladies keep powder in on dressing tables. Her face was composed and her eyes were open, except that nictitating membranes were drawn across as they had been when I had first seen her in the pasture back of our house, a few days or weeks or 1,000 years ago. But she had been hurt then and looked it. Now I half expected her to draw back those inner lids and sing a welcome. I touched her. She was hard as ice and much colder. I blinked back tears and wasted not a moment. She wanted that little box placed 100 yards out on the causeway and the bump on the top twisted, and she wanted it done in the next 6 or 7 minutes. I scooped it up. Righto, mother thing, on my way. Get cracking, chum. Thank you, dear Kip. I don't believe in ghosts. I heard her sing thank you so many times that the notes echoed in my head. A few feet away at the mouth of the tunnel, I stopped. The wind hit me and was so cold that the deathly chill in the tunnel seemed summery. I closed my eyes and counted 30 seconds to give time to adjust to starlight while I fumbled on the windward side of the tunnel at a slanting strut that anchored the causeway to the mountain, tied my safety line by passing it around the strut, and snapped it back on itself. I had known that it was night outside, and I expected the causeway to stand out as a black ribbon against the white snow glittering under a sky full of stars. I thought it would be safer on that windswept way if I could see its edges, which I couldn't by headlamp unless I kept swinging my shoulders back and forth, clumsy and likely to throw me off balance or slow me down. I had figured this carefully, but didn't regard this as a stroll in the garden, not at night, not on Pluto. So I counted 30 seconds and tied my line while waiting for my eyes to adjust to starlight. I opened them. And I couldn't see a damn thing. Not a star, not even the difference between sky and ground. My back was to the tunnel and the helmet shaded my face like a sunbonnet. I should have been able to see the walkway. Nothing. I turned the helmet and saw something that accounted for both the black sky and the quakes we had felt: an active volcano. It may have been 5 miles away or 50, but I could not doubt what it was: a jagged, angry red scar low on the sky. But I didn't stop to stare. I switched on the headlamp, splashed it on the right hand windward edge, and started a clumsy trot, keeping close to that side so that if I stumbled, I would have the entire road to recover in before the wind could sweep me off. That wind scared me. I kept the line coiled in my left hand and paid it out as we went, keeping it fairly taut. The coil felt stiff in my fingers. The wind not only frightened me, it hurt. It was a cold so intense that it felt like flame. It burned and blasted, then numbed. My right side, getting the brunt of it, began to go, and then my left side hurt more than the right. I could no longer feel the line. I stopped, leaned forward, and got the coil and the light from the headlamp. That's another thing that needs fixing. The headlamp should swivel. The coil was half gone. I had come a good 50 yards. I was depending on the rope to tell me it was a 100-meter rope, a climbing line, so when I neared its end, I would be as far out as the mother thing had wanted. Hurry, Kip. Get cracking, boy. It's cold out here. I stopped again. Did I have the box? I couldn't feel it, but the headlamp showed my right hand still clutching around it. Stay there, fingers. I hurried on, counting steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. When I reached 40, I stopped and glanced over the edge, saw that I was at the highest part where the road crossed the brook, and remembered that it was about midway. That brook, methane was it, was frozen solid, and I knew the night was cold. There were a few loops of line on my left arm, close enough. I dropped the line, moved cautiously to the middle of the way, eased to my knees and left hand, and started to put the box down. My fingers would not unbend. I forced them with my left hand, got the box out of my fist. That diabolical wind caught it, and I barely saved it from rolling away. With both hands, I set it carefully upright. Work your fingers, Bud. Pound your hands together. I did so. I would tighten the muscles of my forearms, though it was tearing agony to flex fingers. Clumsily steadying the box with my left hand, I groped for the little knob on top. I couldn't feel it, but it turned easily once I managed to close my fingers on it. I could see it turn. It seemed to come to life, to purr. Perhaps I heard vibration through gloves and up my suit. I certainly couldn't have felt it, not the shape my fingers were in. I hastily let go, got awkwardly to my feet, and backed up so that I could splash the headlight on it without leaning over. I was through. The mother thing's job was done, and, I hoped, before the deadline. If I had had as much sense as the ordinary doorknob, I would have turned and hurried into the tunnel faster than I'd come out. But I was fascinated by what it was doing. It seemed to shake itself, and three spidery little legs grew out of the bottom. It raised up until it was standing on its own little tripod about a foot high. It shook itself, and I thought the wind would blow it over. But the spidery legs played out, seemed to bite into the road surface, and it was rock firm. Something lifted and unfolded out of the top. It opened like a flower until it was about 8 inches across. A finger lifted, an antenna, swung as if hunting, steadied, and pointed at the sky. Then the beacon switched on. I'm sure that is what happened, although all I saw was a flash of light. Parasitic it must have been, for light alone could not have served even without that volcanic overcast. It was probably some harmless side effect of switching on an enormous pulse of power, something the mother thing hadn't had time or perhaps equipment or materials to eliminate or shield. It was about as bright as a peanut photo flash. But I was looking at it. Polarizers can't work that fast. It blinded me. I thought my headlamp had gone out, and then I realized I simply couldn't see through big greenish purple discs of dazzle. Take it easy, boy. It's just an afterimage. Wait and it'll go away. I can't wait. I'm freezing to death. Hook the line with your forearm where it's clipped to your belt. Pull on that. I did as Oscar told me, found the line, turned around, started to wind it on both forearms. It shattered. It did not break as you expect rope to break, it shattered like glass. I suppose that is what it was by then. Glass, I mean. Nylon and glass are supercooled liquids. Now I know what supercooled means. But all I knew then was that my last link with life had gone. I couldn't see, I couldn't hear. I was all alone on a bare platform billions of miles from home, and a wind out of the depths of a frozen hell was bleeding the last life out of my body. I could barely feel, and where I could feel, it hurt like fire. Oscar, I'm here, bud. You can make it. Now, can you see anything? No. Look for the mouth of the tunnel. It's got light in it. Switch off your headlamp. Sure you can. It's just a toggle switch. Drag your hand back across the right side of our helmet. I did. See anything? Not yet. Move your hand. Try to catch it in the corner of your eye. The dazzle stays in front, you know. Well, I caught something that time. Reddish, wasn't it? Jagged, too. The volcano. Now we know which way we're facing. Turn slowly and catch the mouth of the tunnel as it goes by. Slowly was the only way I could turn. There it is. Okay, you're headed home. Get down on your hands and knees and crab slowly to your left. Don't turn because you want to hang on to that edge and crawl. Crawl toward the tunnel. I got down. I couldn't feel the surface with my hands, but I felt pressure on my limbs as if all four were artificial. I found the edge when my left hand slipped over it and I almost fell off, but I recovered. Am I headed right? Sure you are. You haven't turned. You just moved sideways. Can you lift your head to see the tunnel? Not without standing up. Don't do that. Try the headlamp again. Maybe your eyes are okay now. I dragged my hand forward against the right side of the helmet. I must have hit the switch, for suddenly I saw a circle of light, blurred and cloudy in the middle. The edge of the walkway sliced it on the left. Good boy. Now don't get up. You're weak and dizzy and likely to fall. Start crawling. Count 'em. 300 ought to do it. I started crawling, counting. It's a long way, Oscar. You think we'll make it? Of course we can. You think I want to be left out here? I'd be with you. Knock off the chatter. You'll make me lose count. 36, 37, 38. We crawled. That's 100. Now we double it. 101, 102, 103. I'm feeling better, Oscar. I think it's getting warmer. What? I said I'm getting a little warmer. You're not warmer, you blistering idiot. That's freeze to death you're feeling. Crawl faster. Work your chin valve. Get more air. Let me hear that chin valve click. I was too tired to argue. I chinned the valve 3 or 4 times, felt a blast blistering my face. I'm stepping up the stroke. Warmer indeed. 109, 110, 111, 112. Pick it up. At 200, I said I would just have to rest. No, you don't. But I've got to, just a little while. Like that, huh? You know what happens? What's Pee Wee gonna do? She's in there waiting. She's already scared because you're late. What's she gonna do? Answer me. Uh, she's gonna try to wear Tim's suit. Right. In case a duplicate answers, the prize goes to the one postmarked first. How far will she get? You tell me. Uh, to the mouth of the tunnel, I guess. Then the wind will get her. My opinion exactly. Then we'll have the whole family together. You, me, the mother thing, Pee Wee, Cozy, a family of stiffs. But so start slugging, brother. Slug, 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 slug. 205, 206, 207. I don't remember falling off. I don't even know what the snow felt like. I just remember being glad that the dreadful counting was over and I could rest. But Oscar wouldn't let me. Kip, get up. Climb back on the straight and narrow. Go away. I can't go away. I wish I could. Right in front of you. Grab the edge and scramble up. It's only a little farther now. I managed to raise my head, saw the edge of the walkway and the light of my headlamp about 2 feet above my head. I sank back. It's too high, I said listlessly. Oscar, I think we've had it. He snorted. So, who was it just the other day cussed out a little bitty girl who was too tired to get up? Commander Comet, was it? Did I get the name right? Scourge of the Spaceways? The no good lazy sky tramp? Have spacesuit will travel? Before you go to sleep, Commander, can I have your autograph? I never met a real live space pirate before, one that goes around hijacking ships and kidnapping little girls. That's not fair. Okay, okay, I know when I'm not wanted, but just one thing before I leave. She's got more guts in her little finger than you have in your whole body, you lying, fat, lazy swine. Goodbye. Don't wait up. Oscar, don't leave me. Eh? You want help? Yes. Well, if it's too high to reach, grab your hammer and hook it over the edge. Pull yourself up. I blinked. Maybe it would work. I reached down, decided I had the hammer, even though I couldn't feel it, got it loose. Using both hands, I hooked it over the edge above me. I pulled. That silly hammer broke just like the line. Tool steel, and it went to pieces as if it had been cast out of type slugs. That made me mad. I heaved myself to a sitting position, got both elbows on the edge, and struggled and groaned and burst into fiery sweat and rolled over onto the road surface. That's my boy. Never mind counting. Just crawl toward the light. The tunnel wavered in front of me. I couldn't get my breath, so I kicked the chin valve. Nothing happened. Oscar, the chin valve is stuck. I tried again. Oscar was very slow in answering. No, pal, the valve isn't stuck. Your air hoses have frozen up. I guess that last batch wasn't as dry as it should have been. I haven't any air. Again, he was slow, but he answered firmly. Yes, you have. You've got a whole suit full, plenty for the few feet left. I'll never make it. A few feet only. There's the mother thing right ahead of you. Keep moving. I raised my head, and sure enough, there she was. I kept crawling while she got bigger and bigger. Finally, I said, Oscar, this is as far as I go. I'm afraid it is. I've let you down, but thanks for not leaving me outside there. You didn't let me down. You were swell. I just didn't quite make it. I guess we both didn't quite make it, but we sure let him know we tried. So long, partner. So long. Hasta la vista, amigo. I managed to crawl 2 short steps and collapsed with my head near the mother thing's head. She was smiling. Hello, Kip, my son. I didn't quite make it, mother thing. I'm sorry. Oh, but you did make it. Huh? Between us, we've both made it. I thought about that for a long time. And Oscar, and Oscar, of course, and Pee Wee, and always Pee Wee. We've all made it. Now we can rest here. Good night, mother thing. Well, I'm not done with the book, so you can find out what happens next time.